You're now live.
Thank you and good afternoon. I'd like to begin by welcoming those members of the public and press who are watching the live stream of this meeting via the Combined Authorities website. Due to the government guidance on social distancing, this meeting is being held remotely in accordance with the Local Authorities and Police and Crime Panels, Coronavirus, Flexibility of Local Authority and Police and Crime Panel Meetings, England and Wales, Regulations 2020. The software allows you to choose a name when you join the meeting, so if you do not want to be identifiable, please choose a pseudonym. A decision summary and minutes of the meeting will be produced in the usual way, and a recording of the meeting will be available to view on the meeting page of the Combined Authorities website. To enable the meeting to run in an orderly manner, I would like to ask all members of the committee to keep their video cameras switched on for the duration of the meeting and to keep their microphone muted, except when I invite them to speak. Officers will join us to introduce their reports in the usual way. Any members wishing to ask questions or to make a comment should indicate this by clicking the raised hand function under participants on their screen. When I invite you to speak, please unmute your microphone, ask your question, and then mute it again to allow the officer to respond. As with all new arrangements, especially those involving new systems, there is always a risk that we may run into technical problems, and I would ask for your patience if we do so. And I would remind members and officers that all virtual meetings will be recorded. So we move on to the beginning of the meeting, and members, may I begin by calling the names of all members of the committee to establish your presence. So please confirm your presence when I call your name. Councillor Steve Allen.
Yes, indeed, in attendance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor David Ambrose Smith.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Ryan Fuller.
Present.
Councillor Fuller, can you just unmute yourself?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Roger Hickford.
Here, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mike Sargent.
Present.
Thank you. And Councillor Bridget Smith is not here yet, but she may join us shortly. And myself, Councillor Chris Bowden. Would the Democratic Services Officer report any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. We received apologies from Councillor Irene Walsh, and Councillor Steve Allen is attending today as substitute.
Thank you very much. Does any member wish to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest? Would you please, if you do, would you please click the raised hand function if you wish to declare an interest? No one's clicked the raised hand, so I'll assume that no one does wish to make a declaration of pecuniary interest. If at any stage during the meeting it becomes clear to you that you do need to make a declaration, please do so immediately. Right, move on to the next item, 1.2, which is the minutes of the Housing and Communities Committee meeting on the 9th of March 2020. We are being asked to approve the minutes of the meeting on the 9th of March 2020 as a correct record. Can I ask if any member who does not agree with this proposal to click the raised hand function on the right of your screen now? Or anyone who wants to ask a question about it? Councillor Sargent.
I'm happy with the minutes, Chair. I just wanted to raise a couple of issues, if that's okay.
May I just first of all, sorry, Councillor Sargent, may I first of all ask if we can just agree the minutes? And then I'm more than happy to accommodate your questions after that.
I'm happy with the minutes, yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry.
So I see no, Councillor Sargent, you're indicating again.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
You can, if you click on your blue hand again, it will take it off.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's hidden, actually. for some reason, but I will try. Hang on. Right, I'm
Thank you.
back.
That's it. You've got it.
Yeah.
Good. Right. I see now that there are no objections to the proposal to approve the minutes as a correct record, so we will take that as carried. Now, Councillor Sargent, you've got one or two questions to raise.
Yeah, if possible, Chair, I'd like to raise them in two sections because two are relatively small, but the third one's a bit more substantial, if that's okay. So the first one is the minutes on page 6, which is to do with, was it 53? And this is around feedback from the ministry. I wondered if we'd actually got anything back in writing from them and what the situation is currently with release of funds. So that's my first point on that one.
Councillor Sargent, would you mind if we take these one by one, because
No,
in this
fine.
format it makes it a lot easier.
Of course, yeah.
Thank you. Would any officer care to respond to Councillor Sargent's question? Councillor Thompson. Sorry, Roger Thompson.
Sorry, Chair, I was just having a little problem with my screen. By reducing the screen, I can't hit the hand button. I need to change it. Yes, just in response to Councillor Sargent's inquiry, we've been having an ongoing discussion with MHCLG about the year-end review. I understand that as part of the COVID response, MHCLG have sent a proportion of Cambridge City's £70 million direct to them. This was, I think, an action as part of that COVID response, because we realised, I think MHCLG realised there was going to be a delay to the completion of the year-end review of the Combined Authorities 100 million programme, and the process for the review of the Cambridge City programme is different. They're not subject to the annual reviews that the Combined Authority programme is subject to. So that money has been paid direct to Cambridge City. There's a discussion, I think, going on about ongoing monitoring through the partnership agreement that we've got with Cambridge City about how that mechanism will work into the future. So that is where we're at. But I believe they're now hoping that our discussions with MHCLG post-COVID will resolve next month.
Thank you, Roger. Councillor Sargent?
Yeah, I mean, I assume then that funds haven't been released, but perhaps Roger would like to confirm that. If I could just quickly move on to page 7, which is the Histon Road scheme. Certainly when we discussed it last time, we were worried about the risk associated with it. Can I just have confirmation that the risk assessment has been carried out and that it's good to go?
Roger?
Yeah, so a couple of things there. We haven't received our money for the end of the last financial year yet, as I sort of indicated in my last answer. That review is still ongoing. So the Combined Authorities proportion of its money of the 170 million for last year has not yet been received, and that's subject to this resolution next month with MHCLG and the COVID delay. In connection with Histon Road, that has been an all systems go scheme. So that was approved following committee at board on the 25th. Following that, the acquisition of the site and the facility agreement with Lara Homes has now completed. So Lara have acquired the site and they are, I believe, starting some limited works under the COVID lockdown around asbestos removal and doing some preparations with their procurement, with contractor procurement. So I think that scheme looks like it's very positive, and we'll speak a little more about COVID delays later, but subject to that, it seems to be progressing.
Thank you, Roger. Mike?
Okay, I've now got, Chair, a more substantial item, which is in reference to page 10, which is the discussions with Homes England. And we did actually get a document from the Director of Housing about the discussions that have been going on between the Combined Authority and Homes England. And I'd like to just focus on the comments on space standards, if I may, and just read, because people may not have this to hand. Is it okay if I just read out the paragraph that's relevant?
Yes, certainly.
Yeah. So Homes England have advised that the National Described Space Standards is not an obligation, but schemes that complied were encouraged. Homes England leave this up to local planning authorities to decide if they need schemes to meet these requirements, which is a discussion we've had before, of course. Homes England do inquire about units that might be significantly smaller than NDSS, this is the National Described Space Standards, and ask for plans and room layouts to see if the units are suitable for the right client group. Anything significantly under 85% of the NDSS is considered too small by Homes England. Okay, so I think this is very clear how Homes England address the issue of space standards. And I want to ask the Housing Director if we are now following the same approach on space standards. Thanks.
Roger.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, generally speaking, what Homes England advised is pretty much aligned to what we are doing ourselves. So in our applications, we do ask as part of the application for the information around unit numbers and unit sizes, and the threshold there of 85% is actually quite a significant change. We don't really see many, if any, schemes coming through at that 85% or below threshold. If we did, then we would go through the same process as Homes England.
Thank you. Mike, do you want to come back?
I do, because I think what the Housing Director needs to recognise is that Homes England don't just operate at 85%, they actually say Homes England do inquire about units that might be significantly smaller than NDSS and ask for plans and room layouts to see if the units are suitable for right client group. So to me, that's anything between 85% and 100%. And then they're also saying if it's under 85%, they won't really consider it. So what I'm asking for is what we're doing between 85% and 100%.
Roger?
Well, I think, as I said, we look at those applications. Each application is on its merits. If we see something that we think is significantly awry or an issue, we'll talk to the provider about it and reach a conclusion one way or another, and either we'll support it or we won't.
Mike, do you have anything further?
Final stab on this one then, Chair. Yeah, so I mean, I would like us to have more information against each application in terms of space standards, because this is something we can actually measure. And I would like to, on the table that we do get, I would like an indication of whether it's below 100% and perhaps even what the percentage is of the National Space Standard. And if it is less than 100%, that we've checked to see that we're happy with the plans and the room layouts, please, because I'm very happy to do the number crunching, but I think it will be a lot more straightforward for members if they can actually see this clearly laid out in the table, that we recognise it's below 100% of the National Space Standards and we know what action we've taken.
Thank you, Mike. Roger, Mike is clearly suggesting something which would apply from the next meeting onwards for all items which come before us. What is your feeling about providing more information on space standards on each application?
I think that's fine, Chair. We can add that to the table in the reports. We do, as I ask for that information in the application forms anyway. So if that helps the committee to understand the applications that are in front of them, then we'll add that detail to the tables from this point onwards.
Thank you, Roger. Mike, anything that's okay for you? Excellent. May I, at this point, welcome Councillor Bridget Smith to the meeting. Bridget, we've got to the stage that all the other members were happy with the minutes as had been presented to us. Do you have any objections to the minutes as a true record, please?
No, they're fine by me. Thank you. Sorry for being late. Somehow the invitation hadn't arrived. Thank you.
Fully understood. And do you have any comments you'd like to make on the minutes?
No, they're all fine.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, on the basis that committee members are happy to approve the minutes as written, I'd be happy to take that as being carried, and I'll sign a hard copy of the minutes when we return to the office. Move on to agenda item 1.2, the Housing and Communities Committee Actions Log. Now, an updated action log. This is on page 15, by the way, of the report. An updated action log was included in the published papers for this meeting. If any members have any questions on the action log, would they use the raised hand function on the screen to show this, please? No raised hand. So on that basis, I'm assuming that we can take the action log as noted. Item 1.3 of the agenda is public questions. Now, we received no specific public questions or petitions. However, we did get an indication from a member of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee late on Friday evening that Overview and Scrutiny did have some questions for us. My understanding is we haven't actually received the text of those questions yet. If my understanding of that is correct, I would suggest that we ask Overview and Scrutiny to give the text of the questions they want answered, and that they be answered in writing. Is my understanding correct that we haven't actually seen the text of the questions which they wish to raise? Any officers?
If I may, Chair, so I understand that in the early hours of this morning there was an email to your Housing Director setting out the themes they wish to ask questions about, but the questions themselves haven't been finalised. Can I just check that with the Director of Housing, Chair?
That's correct, Chair. So I think if we can be given the specific questions, we're very happy to respond and maybe give written responses to them.
Thank you, Roger. With the agreement of the committee, then we will ask Overview and Scrutiny to give the text of the questions they want answered, and they will be answered in writing. Thank you. Move on to agenda item 1.4, the remit and identity of the Housing and Communities Committee. And could I please ask Roger Thompson to introduce this report?
Thank you, Chair. So this is a very brief report following discussion at the last committee, I think, about the brief for the committee in terms of its communities aspect. So we've done a little bit of investigation under section 2.3 of the report. In the italics, there's reference to committee overseeing the development and approval of housing and community programs and projects not reserved to the Combined Authority Board, including but not limited to culture and tourism, and overseeing delivery of the Connecting Cambridgeshire project by Cambridgeshire County Council. Both of those remits seem to be a sort of very high level strategic oversight, is my interpretation. So that's what I'm recommending to committee. There's also a role, I think, around developing community programs where there's a housing scheme of sufficient scale being delivered by the combined authority within the combined authority area, that it's potentially creating a community in its own right. So that may be more substantive development. So that was my understanding and view on the brief that I'm presenting to committee.
Thank you very much, Roger. Bridget.
Thank you very much. Now, obviously, since our last discussion, we know we've landed in the middle of the COVID crisis, and culture and tourism is now obviously very much under threat throughout the country, but particularly in parts of our area. So I just think we need to be careful about, if we're saying that this committee has a responsibility for culture and tourism, regardless of how high level and strategic that is, we need to be sure that it doesn't mean that other parts of the organisation aren't dealing with the recovery of culture and tourism, which of course is a really significant issue now. That was all I wanted to say on it.
Thank you, Bridget. Does anyone wish to respond to what Bridget just said? No one?
I've just briefly, Chair, other than say, Bridget, I quite understand that point of view. Obviously, we'll speak a little bit more about COVID-19 and the impact on the housing market a little later, I think, in the meeting, but it's clearly having a much wider impact, and the leisure sector in general is clearly being impacted. So how that potentially plays into some oversight role, I think we just need to determine going downstream with the respective authorities in the area.
Thank you, Roger. Dermot, did you want to come in on that?
If I may, Chair, I think would it be helpful for officers to raise with the business and skills team the concerns about culture and tourism, to make sure that it's factored into the reports and the actions they're taking to ensure that business is back to normal as soon as possible, and that the combined authority supports them in getting there.
Bridget, any comment on that?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, I just think the important thing is that it doesn't fall through any net. That somebody is being responsible for it, and somebody is, talking to the key partners to make sure that there's a proper action plan, and we just know where the responsibility lies. I don't mind where in the organisation it is, but this is really quite urgent stuff now.
So thank you, Bridget. So Dermot, I think that your suggestion is a sensible one and a good way to move forwards. Mike, you were next.
On the same subject, but just to highlight that this part of the Cambridge economy is actually 9.2%, which is a very high level. So I think it would be useful at our next meeting that we do get a report as to what the combined authority is doing on this, because either at the strategic level or through the business board, and all the councils are working with the combined authority on the economic issues which COVID is causing, and I think it would be useful to understand what sort of efforts are being made on tourism in particular.
Thank you, Mike. I just fear that from a strategic point of view, having a report for the next meeting is possibly just a little bit too early, given how we don't even know how we're going to be getting out of lockdown yet. And the danger is that it might actually be too early to have a report on that particular subject. Mike, any thoughts?
I mean, it could be a nil report, but I think it would be useful to have a report just so we know where we are really. And it could be around recovery, of course, because we may have to take, it may be acknowledged, for instance, by then that we know the impact on things like education in Cambridge, which causes a lot of the leisure industry jobs. So it may not, you might be right about the strategy, but if we think that some sectors will be hit significantly for a long period of time, it would be good to know what the plan is, even though we're not quite ready to make.
Thank you, Mike. Bridget, sorry, you clearly wanted to come in there.
Thank you. So I don't think, so I'm not sure, I don't think it is too early because, we're already, I think it needs to be a paper about, what are the, to help us identify what our priorities are and what our responsibilities are. So, we're already aware that there's big challenges for Visit Cambridge and beyond. I've had an email from the Imperial War Museum today. We've been doing a lot of work with our 2 zoos who are really struggling. So, it might just be a kind of a position statement to try and identify where the big challenges are, so that we can then have the discussion about what the solutions might be and where the responsibility for those rests. So, we've got the National Trust. It's a bit of kind of information gathering, really. So we know there's a problem, but actually, do we know what the extent of that problem is?
Thank you, Bridget. I doubt that we will know what the extent of the problem is by the time a report has to be produced for the next meeting, but it is perfectly possible for us to have a position statement, as you're suggesting, both showing what our strategic oversight should be and also showing what areas of responsibility lies with what parts either of the combined authority or with other authorities within the area. I think that's perfectly reasonable.
Yeah,
Steve, sorry, you've been waiting to speak for some time.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Mine's just an observation, really, rather than a specific point. As sub, I'm not sure how much this committee is involved in culture and tourism. My brief with Peterborough City Council is housing, culture and recreation, but doesn't have tourism. So getting it joined up between the two councils is something that needs to be looked at. And I'll speak to my colleague, Councillor Walsh, and see how much she has been involved in conversations with you guys regarding culture and tourism, whereas tourism doesn't fall in her brief nor my brief, but with economic development in Peterborough. So I am conscious that, you know, we do have to get our ducks in a row, because I know Cambridge is very, very driven by the tourism market. Peterborough less so, but still is a place to visit and something that we have not really embraced as well as we ought to have done. So just an overview for you there, if I may.
I think that's extremely helpful, Steve, and it just goes to show that the position statement that Bridget has suggested can more clearly delineate who has responsibility for what, because it has not been the standard practice of this committee previously to talk about the non-housing functions of this committee. So the position statement will be extremely helpful, I think, if that's acceptable to officers as well to be able to do. I take that as a yes.
That's fine, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right. Any other comments about this paper, please? Well, if not, then the committee is being invited to note the extent of the communities remit for the Housing and Communities Committee as being the strategic oversight of any new community programmes not reserved to the Combined Authority Board, including culture and tourism, and the Connecting Cambridgeshire project, and the development of community programmes where there is a housing scheme being delivered by the Combined Authority of a sufficient scale that it warrants the development of a community programme. There does seem to be general consensus in support of the recommendations, so I propose, if it's acceptable to everyone, to take the recommendations forward and to take them as carried, if that's acceptable to everyone. Thank you very much. So we'll take that as a unanimous vote in favour of the recommendations. Move on to the next item, which is agenda item 1.5, which is the agenda plan on pages 23 to 26. Do the committee have any comments on the agenda plan? I am aware that there is a date which has been scheduled for the next meeting, which is not on the agenda plan, and that date is, I believe, June the 22nd, unless some officer tells me I've got that date wrong. Any members or officers who wish to make comment? Mike.
Yeah, just noting the housing market assessment update, which I think will be following on from what you were saying earlier on, Chair, will be a difficult one to actually call at that stage. So
it will certainly be difficult, Mike, but it is very important indeed that an attempt is made at the earliest possible opportunity to give an indication as to the direction of travel that's likely to be taking place. So whilst I do agree that we can't expect the impossible, we certainly will want as much as is possible at that point, because it will inform our decision making. Any other comments on this item? If not, we'll note it and move forwards then to part 2, the reports to the Combined Authority Board. And our first report is on agenda item 2.1, which is the approval of the revised business plan for Angle Developments East Limited. Now, Roger and Dermot are potentially conflicted on this as directors of the company. So I believe they have to be asked to be put into a holding pen of some sort, which does make them sound like cattle. But if Dermot and Roger could go into their holding pen, if an officer can place them in there and take them out of our meeting. Right, it looks as though they've gone.
Sorry, Chair. Roger, are you okay to leave the meeting?
I'm sorry, please repeat.
That's okay. Roger's now gone. It's okay,
Fine.
Chair. You can continue.
Thank you very much. Dermot will be replaced for this item, giving advice to us by David Cox if required. So thank you very much indeed, David. Right, so on this agenda item 2.1, could I please ask Nick Sweeney to introduce the report?
Thank you, Chairman. Members will recall that Angle Developments East Limited adopted their initial business plan in March 2019. The board of the company met on 18th of March just gone and agreed to adopt a revised plan. The objectives of the revised business plan have been changed in order to reduce exposure to risk as the business evolves over the first few years. The revised plan sets out that the company will seek to facilitate delivery of more affordable homes, including 100k homes. It will look to support smaller and medium-sized schemes up to 150 units, and it will look to make enough profit to service a loan from the combined authority that was authorised in March 2019. The board of Angle Developments East Limited are very much looking to assess the impact of the COVID-19 situation on the wider market and on any opportunities they identify when considering and actioning the plan. As stated in the executive summary, it is intended to review the position again in 6 months' time and update the business plan if necessary. Members are asked to recommend to the Combined Authority Board that the revised business plan be adopted by Angle Developments East Limited. Thank you, Chairman. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Nick. That was very brief and to the point and very helpful. And I will emphasise that this is not a decision for us to take. This is a decision for the Combined Authority Board to take, so we are merely being asked to make a recommendation to the board. May I ask if any members of the committee would like to ask a question or make a comment, and if so, would they raise their right hand, their blue hand? And Councillor Sargent, you got in first.
Thank you, Chair. I had a look at the original business plan and then the revised one, and there does seem to be a lot of slippage in there, because on page 50 we have year one objectives for 1920, which includes progress on 2 sites. But then with the revised plan, year one has now become 2021 with the original objectives and then some new ones. So I'm very concerned that progress has been very slow on this. I'm sorry to have to contrast that with the joint venture that we've got in Cambridge for the council housing, where we actually first went on site with housing in August 2018. So we talked about this for quite a long time. It was originally part of the housing strategy back in September 2018, but there seems to be very slow progress. Are we sure that this will actually start to deliver, or will we be looking at this again in a year's time with yet another year one?
Thank you, Mike. I think we've got to be very careful here in distinguishing between the work we are doing on the business plan and comments about the actual delivery of housing. Any officer care to respond to the suggestion Mike's making?
Yes, Chair. I will note that the board are only asked to recommend a revised business plan. Sorry, the committee are asked to recommend a revised business plan. I can't really comment on the activities, or don't know if I'm allowed to comment on the activities of the company.
Okay, Bridget. Hello, Bridget, you're muted.
Yeah, fine, thank you. So I don't think that's very satisfactory, actually. I'm sorry as an answer, Nick. So I wanted to pick up on the same points that Mike has highlighted, but also an appeal. Please, can we have in our papers the appendices that are referred to in the paper attached there as well? Because it's really, it takes quite a lot of effort to track these things down, because there was a requirement really to compare the old business case with the latest one. Otherwise it didn't make any sense. There was no track changes or anything. So I do actually think that was a perfectly reasonable question, because we want to understand how this new business case is fit for purpose more so than the previous one.
Nick, would you care to respond?
Yes, well, I can point out that the Combined Authority Board did approve 2 loans to the company for 2 schemes, but the company board refused to accept one of those loans because they thought that particular project had a lot of risk attached to it. And the other one, the other scheme in Finland, unfortunately, another developer came in and agreed terms with the vendor. So what the company agreed with that direct development initiative was to delegate authority to the director, who can proceed and acquire the site if it becomes available again. Now, the main differences in the plans that were both appended to the report, the types of activity are sort of expanded, and they go on to joint venture. There's direct development without significant risk exposure. That's quite important to highlight. They're also emphasising on community land trust support, infrastructure enabling initiatives, strategic land initiatives, and they plan to identify opportunities from constituent council portfolios. So I think the general difference in the revised plans are that the initial plan was fairly generic, and this plan, which is a sort of holding plan if you like, it sort of firms up the operating model and structure of the company and refines the type of activities that they're going to focus on, and particular emphasis on just allowing the business to develop and evolve and not take on too much risk in its infancy. I think that's the main variances in the plan as a summary, and I hope that provides you with a satisfactory overview.
Mike. Mike, you're muted.
I'll get there one day. Right, so I'm also a little bit worried about the governance of this, because we discussed at the last meeting the issue of office conversions, but this seems to be one of the examples that's possible for the revised business plan. And I assume that won't be coming to us, or perhaps even to the Combined Authority Board if we're not careful. And I think it was generally agreed around the committee at the last meeting that we were very concerned about office conversions, and in effect we wanted a high bar and sort of to run a very careful ruler over any potential applications for funding for an office conversion. So what will be the structure for decision making? Will this actually in future come to us or the board if there were to be such a proposal?
Nick?
My understanding is that if the company wanted to invest in a scheme, say wanted to acquire a development site or a conversion scheme, then it would have to approach probably through the committee, the Combined Authority Board for the funding to embark on the project. So I think that would give you your opportunity at that point to make representation. I don't think that the company are authorised to just go out there, or they don't have the resources to go out there and just embark on a scheme straight away.
Is that okay, Mike?
I think I'll have to read through it again, but I mean, one of the reasons for some these sort of more indirect organisations is to give them flexibility and to be relatively light on their feet. I know the people running the company are actually either the mayor or employees of the combined authority. So I would hope they would take our views into account, but I need to read it through again to see if we would have that level of control, because it almost feels as though if we go down the route of it coming to committee and going to the board, it's going to be not light on its feet. It's going to be quite a long process for this company to actually operate in what its remit is, and especially as we've heard that 2 schemes have already failed.
Thank you, Mike. Just to follow up on the point which you raised earlier, you did ask that you hoped that this would mean that it wasn't going to be necessary in 6 months or 12 months' time for this committee to be approached again with changes to what is in front of us today. I have to say that there can be no such guarantee, and in fact, especially in extremely fluid times as we are at the moment, I would be very surprised indeed if there were not some changes which were proposed in the next 6 or 12 months' time, because the environment we're going to be in then is probably going to be very different from the one we're in now. And it is actually appropriate for the arrangements to be under regular review. And if ever there's a time when you'll need to keep it carefully under control, it is the current environment and what we're going to be facing in the next few months. Bridget, you had your hand up.
Thank you. So I'm going to pick up on that point. So on page 62 under J, it says encouraging best use of all property assets, bringing homes that are currently excluded from the market back into market use, and supporting the creation of new homes from existing built assets not currently in residential use. So to me, that means office conversions. And I'm afraid I voted against every single scheme to convert offices into housing for all the reasons that I've expanded on in the past about there being, being in the wrong places, there not being any S Road 106. In some areas, this is, producing the slums of the future. So I'm afraid because that's in there, I can't support this.
Understood, Bridget. Nick.
Thank you. Could I just point out to committee members that page 6 of the revised business plan does specify that if funding is required from the CPCA for any activities, approval will also need to be sought from the CPCA board to secure the appropriate funding facility. And approval will also be required from the parent holding company and Angle Holdings Limited. So there is a safety net there that if the company wants to go out and invest in any scheme, they've got to go and obtain board approval for the funding. So I think that would give you the opportunity to make representation to board if you oppose any particular scheme. And I would also point out that the fact that you might be bringing homes back into use or converting different land uses, I don't think that necessarily means you're going to convert the existing buildings. Each site is got to be looked at individually, and it may be that, say, if there was an office or a warehouse, that site, if it were if it were demolished, it could make an ideal residential opportunity. So I wouldn't generalise too much and assume that every opportunity is going to be a conversion.
Bridget, you still have your hand up.
So J does say existing built assets. It doesn't say redevelopment of land that's previously employment land. It says employment land. It says existing built assets. It doesn't need to be there. We could nail our colours to the mast and say the combined authority will not support this. The local government association is lobbying hard against this, and we should be too. So I'm sorry, the combined authority has approved a couple of these schemes so far, so I have no confidence that they won't do so again.
I think, Bridget, with all due respect, it's a matter of what are the individual schemes and where are they? There are areas, I've given it before, the cities of Westminster and the City of London, where there's active attempts being made to convert, in many cases to reconversion, to convert office accommodation into to residential accommodation. And I know that the Combined Authority has no plans at the moment for any further such applications, and it's difficult to see where there would be any, but we do need to take every single application, every single suggestion on its own merits. And the list which is provided from A to K about the key objectives and principles, if you look at that list from A to K, it's quite clear that there is a hierarchy there, and the most general and the most important principles are given at the top, and the ones which are less generally applicable are down at the bottom, and J is one from the bottom. So this is not central to the future of the way in which the Combined Authority is going to be operating.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, and thank you for that reassurance. But it doesn't say this is a hierarchical list.
No, but I think common sense would tend to suggest if you see what's given at the very top and you work your way down, that we go from the general to the very much more specific. And I think that there's an implied hierarchy in that. Certainly I took it that way. Any other comments from members? Bridget?
No, thank you.
Any other comments from any members? Bridget, do you feel assuaged enough about from the comments which have been received to support this?
No, I'll abstain rather than vote against.
Okay. Well, the reason I asked you that is that if we are in that situation, then I will need to go to a formal vote. But can I check first of all, please? Oh, sorry, Steve, I didn't see your hand up. My apologies.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think a lot of us are somewhat anti-office to resi. It's been hammered to death. But I do think you need to lead the company able to be nimble and make decisions appropriate to what's before it with each particular opportunity. So I would support it with reservations.
Thank you, Steve. Well, the housing, are there any other members who wish to speak before we move to a vote? No, right. Well, the Housing and Communities Committee is invited to recommend to the Combined Authority Board that consent be given to the adoption of the revised business plan for Angle Development East Limited at Appendix 3. Do I have a proposer and seconder for this recommendation, please? If you could use the raised hand function, the blue hand function, for a proposer and a seconder. Proposed by Councillor Hickford, seconded by Councillor Fuller. Thank you very much indeed, councillors. We will now move to the vote. And the most effective way of doing this is for me, I think, to call out the names of each individual councillor and to ask for your vote on this matter. So first of all, Councillor Steve Allen.
For.
Councillor David Ambrose Smith.
For.
Councillor Ryan Fuller.
For.
Councillor Roger Hickford.
For.
Councillor Mike Sargent.
Abstain.
Councillor Bridget Smith.
Abstain.
And myself, Councillor Chris Bowden, for. May I just ask the Democratic Services Officer to advise us on the result of that vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. That's 5 votes for and 2 abstentions.
Thank you very much indeed. I declare that to be carried. Thank you. Right, that's 2.1. Now move on to the programme delivery, I believe. Part 3, programme delivery, and agenda item 3.1, the £70 million affordable housing programme for Cambridge City. And if I may ask, oh, first of all, have we got our 2 officers back from their holding pen? Yes, please.
Chair, they're just rejoining at the moment.
Yes, I see them. Thank you. Welcome back, gentlemen. Right, so we moved on to agenda item 3.1, and may I ask Fiona Bryant to introduce this report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Can everyone hear me?
You're fine, yes.
Thank you. Just to say, this is a normal update report on the 70 million programme for Cambridge City Council. Normally, as is covered in the cover paper, we require update reports to go to our Housing Scrutiny Committee before they are submitted to this committee, and therefore sometimes the reports are obviously do fall slightly out of date. On this occasion, just to make the committee aware, The report was published as our housing committee was due to go ahead. However, it was cancelled at the last minute because of the COVID-19 outbreak. So we did actually agree that since the report was in the public domain, it could be submitted to this committee. So this is the most up-to-date one. However, I do have to apologise in advance and say that there is an error in this report in paragraph 4.3. There is a suggestion which that we have drawn down 37 million to date. Actually, that's not the case. At the time of this report, we had drawn down 24 million, circa 24 million. It was an officer error in developing the report in joining up the dots on a spreadsheet wrongly. I do apologise for that. In terms of my report today, as usual, I would not intend to go through this report in any detail. I'm assuming that committee members have read it. What I do imagine that you're interested in, and I hope that's the case, is an update on that. As you can imagine, at the beginning of the COVID-19 outbreak, there was concern about the safety of continuing on sites in regards social distancing on construction sites. And therefore, actually, all of our sites were effectively mothballed. However, we went through a number of risk assessments on it, and the importance of trying to complete those houses that were near to completion was seen as vital. And therefore, we brought back into activity 13 homes which were virtually near completion, and where the work on them could be done by people working on their own in separate rooms or through social distancing measures. On top of that, we did some other risk assessments, and slightly larger sites have now come back into play. Those include Mill Road and Cromwell Road. Social distancing measures are being completed. I have to say the difficult part in terms of those two sites clearly is in continuing on with the sales part rather than just the construction part. We have actually exchanged on 8 houses recently on Mill Road, which is quite pleasing. We're doing everything we can, obviously, by remote agreements, etc., including contracts. However, it is clear that there is some uncertainty, and certainly 2 buyers on that site have actually withdrawn prior to exchange. We've also progressed on moving one leaseholder from Colville Road site, and effectively because they needed to move out, and we could move them into another property that was void, so we could do it safely. But obviously the uncertainty is continuing. At the moment, we've been doing risk assessments on potential value of sales in the next 6 to 12 months in particular. Most of the reports coming out indicate that they believe that in general, at the moment, the market in Cambridge, subject to confidence and subject to lockdown measures being eased in the not too distant future, is remaining reasonably high. However, the impact on those who are there and whose businesses are supporting or jobs are supporting their ability to buy a house will clearly be coming in sort of dribs and drabs over the next few months. So I think it's not fair to say that we have any guaranteed position, but at the moment we are progressing as much as we can, and clearly there are some people who are prepared to still sign up on the dotted line to exchange on some houses where they have the confidence to do so. As we can, we will continue to bring back the construction teams on site, depending on government advice. Sorry, I can't hear.
That's my fault. My apologies for following my own advice and muting myself. Thank you, Fiona, for that report. That was extremely helpful. Would any members of the committee who would like to ask a question or to make a comment, please use the blue hand function to indicate? No one? then am I correct in assuming then there seems to be a general consensus in support of the recommendation? If that's acceptable to members, and the recommendation is that I believe that we are meant to note this report, so that if that's acceptable to all members. If anyone disagrees, please show with a raised hand. Fine, I will take that then as a unanimous vote in favour of noting this report. Moving on to the next item, which is the Affordable Housing Programme agenda item 3.21, and that's at Brampton Park in Brampton in Huntingdonshire. Now, this is the first of the reports where we have an exempt appendix, and may I just have confirmation that no member wishes to discuss the content of the exempt appendix. If any member does wish to, would they please use the raised hand function to indicate this now? No, thank you very much indeed. Since no member has indicated they wish to discuss the exempt report, may I ask Asma Ahmed Pierce to introduce this report.
Hi there, Councillor Bowden and the committee. Good afternoon. Right, I've got quite a few units to get through, so I'll just start now. First one is Brampton Park with the housing association called Resi. They have 6 units, all shared ownership. They're requesting a grant of £270,002 at Brampton Park in Hunts. It's on a wider site of 118 homes. They are providing properties of a 2, 3 and 1 4-bed. They have a bigger portfolio elsewhere in London, and they have a managing agent with Metropolitan Thamesway who will be managing the properties. They have a contractual agreement with them. The units per grant for this site is 45k.
Thank you very much indeed for that report. This is on pages 105 to 112 of our agenda pack. May I ask any member who wishes to ask a question or to make a comment to raise their hand? And Mike, I see you.
Thank you, Chair. I note that all the schemes that are coming to us today are shared ownership. There's no rented element to the schemes we're looking at today. And I note in particular on this one that it's due for completion in May 2020. So we're not approving a scheme which is speculative in any way. I am concerned that we are just taking over houses that can't be sold on the open market at the moment. So can I get confirmation on what's happening in that respect, and also about why we aren't getting rented properties coming through?
May I just ask first, Mike, what is your concern about taking over houses which can't be sold on the private market?
That we just become a way of helping developers, yeah, when they can't sell houses, rather than what I thought was our brief, which is the development of new affordable homes.
Thank you. Or any other officer? Or Roger?
Sorry. Right. All these units that came to me for this committee were all sort of on our pipeline or were pre-arranged. So they were all on our pipeline, and there are unfortunately shared ownership. Obviously, with the situation going forward, I haven't noted anybody sort of saying that they're offloading it for that matter because they can't get rid of market units at this moment in time. All these were already in the pipeline and we were aware of them.
Thank you, Asma. And I'd be correct in saying, would I not, that there is no specific type of affordable housing, no particular tenure, which has preference over any other one as far as the combined authority is concerned?
That is correct.
Mike, any further comment?
Yeah, so we see on page 108, paragraph 3.1, that there was already plans for 39 shared ownerships on this site. And it looks as though we're just picking up an extra 6. So I don't see how this could have actually been in the pipeline for a long period of time. It does appear as though it's something new. So that's why I raised my concern.
Mm-hmm. No, I understand what you're sorry, I understand what you're saying, Councillor Sargent, but I only came and found out of those 6 units that became available through Resi.
And would I be correct in saying that these are clearly, there is clear additionality here in terms of affordable housing?
That is correct. They are shared ownership as affordable housing, nothing else. And they are additionality.
Good, thank you. Councillor Fuller.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. As the leader of Hunts, I thought I might just come in there. I'm not entirely sure what the situation in Cambridge is, but this is certainly something we're seeing more and more often in Huntingdonshire, and it's not at all being driven by the difficulty in selling these properties on the open market. We're actually seeing this as being driven by the housing associations themselves, who are looking to pick up extra shared ownership units on some of the new developments around the district. I have no qualms with this whatsoever. As you said, Chairman, it is additionality. It's 6 extra units. We're helping to get people into home ownership through the shared route. So we absolutely support it in Huntingdonshire, and I don't think there's any reason for members to be concerned.
Thank you, Ryan. Can I check whether any other member of the committee wishes to speak before we move to the report recommendation? No one else? Well, the Housing and Communities Committee is recommended to commit grant funding of £270,002 from the £100 million Affordable Housing Programme to enable delivery of 6 additional shared ownership homes at Brampton Park, Brampton in Huntingdonshire. Do I have a proposer and seconder for this recommendation, please, using the blue hand? Proposed by Councillor Fuller, seconded by Councillor Ambrose Smith. Thank you very much indeed. If any member wishes me to go through member by member to ask whether they support, oppose or wish to abstain, would they just indicate with a blue hand or wave at me, and I'll do it person by person, otherwise I'll take it by default. No one? So with your agreement then, members, there seems to be a general consensus in support of the recommendation. So I propose to take this as being agreed unanimously, if that's acceptable to members. Thank you very much indeed. Next item is agenda item 3.22, which is the Halo St Thomas Park proposal. And again, Asma, I wonder, first of all, I must check that no member wishes to raise any item which is in the exempt section of the report. Good, in which case, Asma, would you be kind enough, please, to introduce this item?
Thank you, Chair. Right, this is Halo, St Thomas Park, Ramsey and Hunts. The properties are built by Linden Homes. There are 10 properties, all shared ownership. Because we've been working with Halo, they've come back to us with further units. The site was due to complete by June 2020. Obviously, with COVID, the site has been shut down for a while and there has been slippage, I've been advised. Some of them are built and some of them aren't built yet or completed, so there is slippage. Anticipated dates are an extra 3 to 6 months. They are providing all family-sized units of 3 and 4 bed properties. These properties will be purchased by Halo and then be through shared ownership through Halo's Home Reach brand. These products are additionality. As I said, we've been working with Halo. They've been on our pipeline with units that they said they were going to approach with us for the next foreseeable future. These 10 units will be at 476,997 and the average rate of grant is 47k per unit. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Asma. Thank you, Asma. That's much appreciated. Would any member care to ask any question or to make any point? Mike first.
Yes, going back to my point when we were looking at the minutes, I have been checking to see what percentage of the national space standards or all the applications are. And I note in this case that they are 88% and 86%. So if it had been a grant or grant from Homes England, they would be looking at the plans and the room layouts. And I would want to know if we've done that on this occasion.
Any officer care to respond?
As I mentioned, Chair, we do look at the size of the units, but on size standards, this is a planning issue, as been mentioned previously. I can't really state much more than that. If it's been given planning, then if they come to us for funds, we assume these have been checked.
I'm sorry, Chair, but this is contrary to the approach taken by Homes England and what we discussed earlier. So Homes England wouldn't just take it that this had planning permission. They would carry out further investigation because it's very close to 85%. As I say, they're 88% and 86%. And unless I get reassurance that we have looked in more detail as to the suitability, I will be abstaining on this one.
Asma, Roger?
As I've said, when we spoke to Homes England, they said anything under 85% of NDSS standards, they would be looking into this. This is just over that amount. We did look at those issues, but as I said, it is a planning issue. I couldn't really say much more than that, I'm afraid.
Councillor, sorry, I think as we referred earlier in the meeting, I think we agreed obviously from this point onwards in terms of the reporting that we would be giving a more detailed commentary on the space sizes for future reference. Obviously we haven't done that specifically for this meeting. I think from our point of view, we see these units in excess of the 85% threshold. They were originally intended as market units, but we have no reason to think that they wouldn't be appropriate for shared ownership affordable housing use.
Thank you, Roger. Bridget.
Sorry, Chair, can I just come back quickly?
Oh, sorry. Bridget, if Mike can just have a response first.
Yeah, certainly reading the notes that we've got from the discussions with Homes England, there are really two categories by the look of it, if they fall below the national space standards. If they're less than 85%, then Homes England don't go ahead. But if it's between 85% and 100%, they will have a look at it. And my issue is that we aren't doing that, and we must do it in future. But I'm certainly not reassured that these are suitable houses at the moment, notwithstanding the fact that they have got planning permission.
Thank you, Mike. Bridget.
Thank you. So if we just go back to some of the sort of vision statements of the combined authority, they talk always about, you know, really high quality homes that are fit for people in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and that's in relation to environmental standards, energy efficiency, and so on and so forth. So I think just because something has planning permission, it's a bit like the issue about converting offices to housing. Just because it gets planning permission doesn't necessarily mean that it's deserving of combined authority money. So I think we need to get a bit smarter about this, really. Anything that's going to be branded as a combined authority scheme needs to be of the highest standards, and that those standards are space standards, connectivity standards, environmental standards, and so on. So I'm afraid, with all due respect to officers, just because something gets planning permission actually doesn't necessarily mean that we should be supporting this.
Thank you, Bridget. Steve?
Thank you. Yes, I would echo that. I mean, clearly, builders build for a profit, but as an authority, we should be setting standards by which we expect planning permission to be approved. Just an observation.
Thank you. There is always the danger, of course, that if, as Bridget was suggesting, that we always insist on the highest standards, then we will not manage to achieve the necessary numbers which are required. And there is always a balancing act to be had here. I'm not quite convinced that the highest standards is necessarily an appropriate measure to use to determine what it is that we do. Obviously, we have to have sufficient standards. They're not necessarily always the highest. Any other members? Councillor Fuller.
Thank you, Chairman, and I hate to disagree with my colleagues, but we did discuss this at quite some length at the last meeting of this committee, where I think I made my views very well known, that the statement we've just heard from Councillor Allen, for example, would represent a completely unacceptable interference in the planning sovereignty of individual planning authorities. It's not our role as the combined authority to try to force local authorities who are sovereign in their own right to do things by means of funding. You've quite rightly made the point, Chairman. We're here to try and provide additionality. We're not Homes England with respect to Councillor Sargent. Nowhere does it say we absolutely have to do exactly what Homes England would do. And I would suggest that we actually shouldn't be doing that. Otherwise, it calls into question the very need for the government to have set up a combined authority to provide more homes than Homes England itself has been able to do over the last decade. You know, we do have to look at things slightly differently. I think officers have made the point very validly that this does meet our standards. It does meet the normal standards, in fact, and we should accept that, Chairman, I think, and we should support this. We're going to get ourselves into a very difficult position, I think, if we start trying to bend the arms of developers through planning authorities.
Thank you, Brian. Mike, you still have your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I think Bridget said it very well. You know, we should be providing high quality homes. I mean, certainly all these homes that are coming through at the moment wouldn't even have got planning permission in Cambridge. And I'm very concerned that in the rest of the county, these small houses are being provided, and that we are actually supporting that as the combined authority.
I can tell you, Mike, that within Finland, in many cases, if we didn't provide smaller houses, we wouldn't be providing any houses at all. And the economics of the house building industry, I'm sorry to say, is very different in the north of the county from what it is at the south. Not that I'm saying that the south doesn't have problems. I fully accept that Cambridge and South Cambridgeshire have issues, but our issues in the north of the county are almost exactly the opposite of yours, I have to say. Which isn't denying the validity of your issues, but please don't deny the validity of ours as well.
I think it's sorry, Chair, because I know we've already talked about this at a previous meeting, but I think it would be useful to have a report on that so that we don't, you know, so we have got the background information really, because I mean, Cambridge is certainly the most expensive in comparison with the local average wage, for instance, in terms of housing. So I'm slightly at a loss as to why this is more difficult in the rest of the combined authority area. So I would certainly welcome any information which indicates this, what I perceive to be a contradiction of the facts, if you like.
I think, Roger, if you wouldn't mind considering what Mike has just suggested, it may not be appropriate for the next meeting, but I think that some overarching report explaining what the differences are in terms of the challenges for providing housing between the northern part of the combined authority area and the southern part may be quite a helpful background paper for members, and could provoke some very interesting discussion. David, sorry, you had your hand up.
Yes, you've butted in and said what I was going to say regarding supporting Councillor Fuller. So there we are. What I would like to see in these reports in the future is perhaps an illustration of the site plan, not the floor plan of the rooms and so forth, but a site plan so we can see clearly what we're actually is being presented to us, because this isn't really showing us, this is showing me on this map here the A1M, and really nothing else. So I'd like to see more than that. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Ryan and then Bridget.
Thank you, Chairman. At risk of prolonging this, I think with all due respect to Councillor Sargent, we can't apply a Cambridge City mentality to the entirety of the combined authority area. That's exactly what we shouldn't be doing here. And, you know, he's made the point himself there that some of these sites wouldn't have got through the planning system in Cambridge. Well, dare I suggest that's the very reason why, or one of the very reasons why Cambridge has some of the worst affordability problems, not only in the county, but in the country. And you've quite rightly said, Chairman, we do need to look at the individual circumstances of each part of this county as we're applying these decisions and the policy to this. I think it's that very point that's confusing me, because we have now had this debate at Councillor Sargent's request at 3 committee meetings, and yet it is not a policy of the combined authority that Councillor Sargent is trying to apply to the decision making here. So may I suggest that we bring something back to a future meeting where we can have that proper debate.
Thank you, Ryan. That's very helpful. Bridget.
Thank you. So I appreciate both what you, Councillor Bowden and Councillor Fuller, have said, and you're quite right. It's not our job to undermine each other's planning policies, and absolutely, Cambridgeshire is a very diverse area with different needs throughout it. So I think picking up on your recommendation, I think it would be really helpful for us to have a better understanding of each other's challenges. So I won't vote against this, but I do just think that you know, we need to think about the role of this committee in driving you know, standards that are as high as they possibly can be, because that's actually what all our residents deserve, regardless of which part of Cambridgeshire we live in. But we need an understanding about what's acceptable, both in terms of space standards and affordability and so on.
I think those comments are very reasonable, Bridget. Bridget, you still have your hand up. Do you want to come back?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. May I just check, please, whether any other member of the committee wishes to speak before we move to the report recommendation? No? Right, well, the recommendation is that we commit grant funding of £476,997 from the 100 million Affordable Housing Programme to enable delivery of 10 additional shared ownership homes at St Thomas Park, Ramsey, Huntingdonshire. Do I have a proposer and seconder for this recommendation using the blue hand? Councillor Fuller proposing, and Councillor Ambrose Smith seconding. Thank you very much indeed. We will now move to the vote, and I will call each committee member in turn and ask you if you agree with the recommendation, disagree, or wish to abstain. Councillor Steve Allen.
Agreed.
Councillor Ambrose Smith.
For.
Councillor Ryan Fuller.
For.
Councillor Roger Hickford. Sorry, Roger, you're muted.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Mike Sargent.
Abstain.
Councillor Bridget Smith.
Agreed.
And myself, Councillor Chris Bowden, for. Would the Democratic Services Officer report the outcome of that vote for the record, please?
Thank you, Chair. That's 6 votes in favour and 1 abstention.
Thank you very much indeed. The motion is carried. Next agenda item is 3.23, which is from the £100 million Affordable Housing Programme, Whittlesea Green, Sandpit Road, Harriers Rest and Cromwell Fields. Again, Appendix 1 to this report is exempt from publication. May I just check that no member wishes to talk to any item within Appendix 1, the exempt area? No one? Thank you very much indeed. Therefore, may I ask Asma Ahmed Pierce, please, to introduce this report.
Thank you, Chair. Right, this is another Halo site working with our provider, Larkfleet Homes. They are in the construction of 4 sites which were mentioned: Whittlesea Green, Sandpit Road, Thorney, Harriers Rest in Wittering, and Cromwell Fields Brewery Hunts. One site the one site in Fenlands has 11 units. The two sites in Peterborough have 8 and 7 respectively, and the last site in Hunts has 6 units. All of these units are shared ownership and will be going through Halo's Home Reach shared ownership product. There are 32 units in total, and I've spoken to Hunt's Housing Enabling Officer, who is happy to support this, and the Fens and Peterborough Housing Enabling Officer to support this. They are asking for a grant of £1,379,072. The average grant rate is 43.1. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed, Asma. And just to confirm, all of these properties meet the requirements for additionality.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you very much. Would any of the committee members wishing to ask a question or make a comment, please use the raise hand function. So to do. Councillor Sargent.
I won't enter into a debate, but as one of the schemes is at less than 80% of the National Space Standard, I will be voting against.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from members? Nothing else? Thank you. I'll move then to the recommendation, and the recommendation is that we commit grant funding of £1,379,072 from the 100 million Affordable Housing Programme to enable delivery of 32 additional shared ownership homes at 4 sites across the combined authority area. Do I have a proposer and a seconder for this recommendation, please? Proposed by Councillor Hickford. Seconded by Councillor Ambrose Smith. Thank you very much indeed, councillors. We will now move to the vote. I'll ask each committee member in turn if you agree with the recommendation or disagree or wish to abstain, and please unmute your microphone to respond. Councillor Steve Allen.
Agreed.
Councillor David Ambrose Smith.
For.
Councillor Ryan Fuller.
For.
Councillor Roger Hickford.
For.
Councillor Mike Sargent.
Against.
Councillor Bridget Smith.
For.
And myself, Councillor Chris Bowden. For. May I ask the Democratic Services Officer for the record to report the outcome of that vote, please?
Thank you, Chair. That's 6 votes in favour and 1 against.
Thank you very much indeed. The motion is carried. Moving on from that to agenda item 3.24, which is the, again from the £100 million Affordable Housing Programme, the Roman Fields, Paston, Manor Drive, Peterborough application. And Asma, I will ask you to introduce this. Once again, may I just ask if any member wishes to refer to Appendix 1, which is the exempt appendix, would they indicate now, please? Good, thank you very much indeed. Asma.
Thank you, Chair. Right, this is from Keep Moat. They are developing a bigger site which hosts 457 units. 23 of them are being delivered as shared ownership and as additionality for Peterborough area. The site is broken into 3 phases and they're currently on site as we speak. The site has now been closed due to COVID, but at the time of writing the report, they were still on site. 23 units are being asked to 10-year conversions from market shared ownership, and they're working very closely with Halo's Home Reach shared ownership scheme. So these properties will be sold by Keep Moat in the initial stage, and then they'll be handed over to Halo to deal with the management of these units. These units will be done through a deed of adherence as well, which is currently accepted by Homes England. Planning was granted in 2017. They were looking to hopefully complete the site in Q4 2021 to 22. However, there has been delay due to COVID. They're a mixture of 2 and 3 bedroom houses. I spoke to the Housing Enabling Officer for Peterborough. She was happy with supporting this site and made arrangements with Halo that the tranche would be only 40% in the first instance. She was happy that these units were over and above Section 106 obligations on additional units to the PCC. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Asma. That's very helpful. And I take it from that last comment that our definition of additionality is thereby met.
That's correct.
Thank you. Any members care to speak? Steve?
Thank you, Chair. This is just for clarification because it's actually, I'm ward councillor for that pitch and also it's my portfolio in Peterborough. I do know that we had some additionals come on board, having already had an agreed tranche from the outset. Are these the additionals that have popped up, or are we still working on the first tranche that we agreed to for the affordables in that site?
Asma?
I can't really answer that. I was only aware of these units as they came onto our pipeline, so I'm not sure. I am aware that you do have some on there as part of your 106 obligations, so I don't think these are part of that. I was advised that there are conversions, so this is the tranche that's been converted over from initially market to shared ownership.
Steve?
Yeah, if I may. Okay, I think that satisfies my question because I'm just conscious that we recently had some more come on board because the market was soft for that particular development, and so we were offered some more.
Thank you. Mike?
As before, at least one of these is at 81% of the National Space Standard, so it wouldn't be supported by Homes England, and I don't think we should either, so I'll be voting against.
Thank you, Mike. Any other comments from any other members, please? Okay, then I will move to the recommendation. And the recommendation is that the committee is recommended to commit grant funding of £1,500,000 from the 100 million affordable housing programme to enable delivery of 23 additional shared ownership homes at Roman Fields, Paston, Peterborough. Again, do I have a proposer and a seconder for this recommendation, please? Using blue hands. Proposed by Councillor Steve Allen. Seconded by Councillor David Ambrose Smith. Thank you, councillors. We will now move to the vote. May I ask each committee member in turn if they agree with the recommendation, disagree, or wish to abstain. Councillor Steve Allen.
For.
Councillor David Ambrose Smith.
For.
Councillor Ryan Fuller.
For.
Councillor Roger Hickford.
For.
Councillor Mike Sargent.
Against.
Councillor Bridget Smith.
For.
And myself, Councillor Chris Bowden, for. I'd be grateful if, for the record, the Democratic Services Officer would report the outcome of that vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. That's 6 votes in favour and 1 against.
Thank you very much. The motion is thereby carried. We now move on to agenda item 3.25, which again, from the 100 million affordable housing programme, is from the development of the former John Mansfield School site in Damson Drive, Peterborough, PE1. Again, Appendix 1 to this report is exempt. May I just check if any member wishes to speak to the exempt appendix? No one? Thank you very much indeed. Again, if I may invite Asma Ahmed Pierce to introduce this report.
Thank you, Chair. Right, this is Keep Moat again. They approached with the John Mansfield School site. They were looking for a grant for a further 10 shared ownership units in this transaction, which was sort of in collaboration with Paston as well. So there's only one business plan, including for both of them. Keep Moat are applying for the affordable housing grant and will construct the units. And then they will be handed over in a deed of adherence to Halo Homes Reach shared ownership scheme. Planning was approved in 2017 and they started on site 2018. Completion was due Q1 21-22. There is now slippage because of COVID. All the 10 units were converted from market to shared ownership. The homes range from a 2 to 4 bedroom homes. Keep Moats are currently on site at the moment, but again, at the time of writing the report, they were on site, they no longer are. I spoke to the enabling housing officer for Peterborough, who was happy to support the application for a request for grant, and she also said this was over and above the Section 106 requirement for the site and was happy to assist. The grant that they're requesting is 430,500. Average grant per unit is 43k. And these are the final units. They will be transferred over to Halo Homes to deal with the management of those units after the first initial tranche is sold. Sorry, Councillor, we can't hear you.
Thank you very much, Asma. Would any member care to ask any question or to raise any point? No? Then may I ask if I may have a proposer and a seconder for this recommendation? I should read out the recommendation, of course, that the council grants funding of, sorry, the committee grants funding of £430,500 from the £100 million affordable housing programme to enable the delivery of 10 additional shared ownership homes at JMS Danson Drive, Peterborough. Now the proposer, Councillor Hickford, a seconder, Councillor Allen, and may I assume from the lack of debate that everyone is going to be happy to approve this. Anyone unhappy about that? Then we will deem that to be approved unanimously. Thank you very much indeed, members. Right, moving on to agenda item 3.3 on pages 147 to 158 of the agenda pack. We have the £100 million affordable housing programme update. And I wonder if I may ask Roger Thompson to introduce this report.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the usual monthly stroke every meeting update on the £100 million programme. There's various bits of statistical data in here. I'll pick out one or two things for you, but I guess the burning question in everyone's mind is probably COVID, and what does this look like in terms of the impact on the programme. So clearly COVID is creating additional risk around the programme. The short-term impacts that we're seeing, and Asma's articulated a little bit of this with her commentary on the schemes, and Fiona also with regard to what's happening in Cambridge City. The short-term impacts are contractors being off-site. There being potential delays to some of our schemes starting on site, which is obviously our key criteria with regard to the assessment with MHCLG on where the programme is at, but also on completions as well. We were expecting some completions to be coming through over the past few weeks on two schemes, and they're now currently held up. The wider issues for our programme, I think, are going to depend upon the duration of the situation that we're seeing and the wider impacts on the economy, and then that filters down into the housing market. It's early to say to what degree this COVID situation is going to impact the housing market. There's clearly an impact in the short term. So we will continue to sort of monitor some of the key indicators and report to committee on what that profile starts to look like as it evolves. The programme impact at the moment is probably not that huge, because those schemes that had a delayed start on site, we anticipate will start on site at some point in the next few months. And therefore, as our key number with MHCLG starts on sites, any of the schemes that we have in our programme at the moment, I don't think we're going to have a pushback of start on sites going beyond March 2022. And therefore, the programme that we currently have is sort of, it's not okay as such, but we're not facing a catastrophic programme impact at this moment in time. There may be some more short-term opportunity for us to look at market units and schemes and how maybe they may be converted to a degree. But there's also, I think, a concern about some of the decision making with the registered providers and a nervousness maybe with the decision makers there about committing to new schemes at this time. So we will continue to monitor what's going on. In connection with the programme, prior to today, there were 29 schemes that board and committee had approved. They are listed in Appendix 1. There's a full sort of programme information there for you to look at in that spreadsheet. 18 of those schemes are in contract. We've provided, I think as requested at last meeting, a graphic showing a geographical spread of the units around the combined authority area. That was colour coded as well, in that the green dots were grant schemes and the blue dots, if I recall correctly, were 40 million revolving fund loan schemes. Just to flag that to committee. And in terms of our numbers, the headline numbers were 1,218 units before today approved, 483 starts on site and 89 completions. There was a bar graphic. I think we were asked to supply some bar charts as well, showing how the programme had been moving along. That is also provided as one of the appendices for people to see how that programme has been evolving. So happy to take questions, but that's a summary, I think, of where we're at the moment.
Thank you very much, Roger. That's very helpful. I think I just saw Councillor Sargent before Councillor Smith. Mike.
So not a dead heat then, Chair. Right, so we know certainly the government are talking to local authorities about their financial situation on a regular basis now. On these sort of projects, if you like, in this case a 5-year project, are the government being proactive in finding out what impact there will be on progress and how achievable it will be to deliver in the 5 years, as I say in this case?
It's a little early, I think. They've been a little more, I think, involved in some crisis management in terms of COVID in the short term. We have been talking about some ideas on our part that we may push back upstream to MHCLG, and a future meeting we may be able to talk to committee about that. But it's very early stages with this. Obviously, it's really the last 5 or 6 weeks that we've had these real social distancing measures and the shutdown, and yeah, it's evolving day to day, isn't it, in terms of the impacts that are becoming apparent. We haven't been specifically asked by MHCLG for any impact assessment yet, but I'm sure it will be coming, and we'll provide that when they ask.
Mike, do you want to follow up?
No, I've gone to a second point, actually. Thanks for that, Roger. No, it was just, I think I've asked many times for this, and sort of following on from the discussion we had about shared ownership earlier on, could we, in the table of homes that we're delivering, actually have an indication on the level of rented and shared ownership? I think I was promised in the past that we would do that, but it's still missing. And I think it's, in terms of the sort of distribution, we've got the geographical distribution, but I think it's also of interest what the tenure types are as well.
No, very, very happy, Mike, to Councillor Sargent to supply some sort of breakdown around tenure split as well. Yes, next time out we'll give you some data on tenure split as well.
Thank you, Roger. Is that okay, Mike? Excellent. Bridget.
I just want to say thank you very much for providing the map. That makes a huge difference, and I will be sharing that. So very grateful, and I hope that'll be regularly updated.
Absolutely, you're very welcome, Councillor Smith.
And what I thought, Bridget, was notable about that was just how widely spread out all of the schemes have been. And it's been impossible, as we've gone through meeting by meeting, to have managed to get that image that the map very clearly produces for us. So it was a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I had a sort of skewed idea. So it was really interesting just to see how good the spread is, and how, you know, okay, there is a skew to the places where, you know, housing is a bigger issue. So I'm very pleased with it. Thank you, most appreciated.
Thank you, Bridget. And Roger, would you care to give an indication, please, as to, without necessarily giving precise numbers, because I haven't asked you to prepare for this question, but give an indication, please, about the size of the potential tail of our pipeline, as opposed to the number of homes we still need to give financing agreement for to reach our target.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, Chris, what's in the pipeline, is that the sort of gist of what you're asking, or?
The possibility, the contrast between the number of properties potentially in the pipeline, not all of which will come to fruition, of course, against the number of properties we still need to authorise in order to get to target.
Sure. Okay. So after today's committee, we're at 1,299 units authorised. So clearly we need to get another 700 plus through the authorisation programme. At the moment in our pipeline, when Asma and I last sort of reviewed that, we had about 3,000 units or so that were, let's see, Asma's nodding, in the pipeline. So clearly that's quite a healthy situation from pipeline and approvals point of view. The critical thing for us though is to get those conversions to the starts on site, and obviously at the moment that's where COVID is. I say we're carrying a short-term risk with that, and hopefully it will be no more than a short-term risk around that. But we continue to need to see a good volume of schemes coming through clearly to continue to sort of start to de-risk where we're at.
Thank you, Roger. That's very helpful. Mike, you put your hand up again.
Yeah, on this specific point, Chair, actually, yes. I see we're really only at 25% in terms of starts on site, with really 2 years to go, which contrasts with the Cambridge situation, which is 60% on site, I think. You know, and notwithstanding what's happening with COVID, we were already, I believe, behind on starts on site. So I think we really need some indication, perhaps at the next meeting, that starts on site will actually happen, if you like, in the timescale that we've got available.
We have in the schedule appendix 1 given some risk assessment against some of the schemes. So there are a couple of schemes that are amber, one that is red. That is sort of our assessment of the issue and potential risk we might be carrying on existing approved schemes to seeing them start. There's a prospect, I think, when we next meet, that maybe one scheme with I think 9 or so units may actually drop away. But equally, we need to see that being replaced and more with new schemes. Starts on site, I agree, Mike, are a critical criteria for us, and we need to make sure that the schemes that are approved are being progressed by whoever's in control of it, whether it's the provider or the developer. And part of Asma's role, more challenging as we get more schemes, is to continue to sort of encourage, cajole, and track those situations. Because if anything is going wrong, if there are more ambers out there and we don't know about it, we might get caught out. We've clearly had our programme slowed, as we know, last year with our 7 months hiatus around affordable rental. That wasn't helpful, and we're in catch-up mode, and we know that. So COVID, it is presenting a risk, and if we have a COVID type situation that goes on for a prolonged period, then obviously that risk to us increases. Yeah.
Thank you, Roger. Sorry, Mike, you want to follow up on that?
Yeah, because I mean, one of the things, although I said there was 25% starts on site, actually 12% of those are just infrastructure, I shouldn't have said just, which contributes about 50% of our starts on site at the moment. Are we going to have some more infrastructure grants coming forward, do we know, which obviously would make things look a lot healthier?
There are potential opportunities out there, but I can't sit here confident and say, oh, within the next month or two you're going to receive a major infrastructure application, Mike. We would love to have some more infrastructure type applications, and it may well be that with the sort of market dynamics that we're seeing, that actually might encourage 1 or 2 more schemes of that nature to come to us.
Thank you, Roger. Mike, do you wish to come back? Fine, thank you. David. David, you're muted.
Yes, I am. Yeah. Regarding the what's left in the fund and the number of houses, units left to build or to fund, will we be able to fund those at the same rate as we've funded the units to date? Did that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you. So after the approvals today, we had £27.3 million committed from the 60 million that we in the housing strategy said we were going to try and pre-allocate for grant. So from that point of view, you can do the maths. We need about 700 units from 33 million. That I guess comes out at an average of about 45,000 or so a unit. And obviously some of the schemes we've seen today were at 43 or 47. They were sort of around that area. There's one or two things in the pipeline actually that may be slightly cheaper to fund that we're hoping will come forward. So it feels like if we are, if I had someone come to me and said, here's 700 affordable units beamed out of nowhere at 44,000 a unit, would you like to take them? I think we'd be saying yes and de-risking the programme.
Thank you. You've answered the question. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions from any other members? Right, we're merely being asked to note this report. May I assume that everyone is happy to note the report? If so, I'll take that as being general consensus in support of the recommendation, and we'll note the report accordingly. The date of the next meeting is the 22nd of June, I understand, unless members tell me otherwise, or unless officers tell me otherwise. But the arrangements for that meeting will be confirmed nearer to the time in the light of the emerging situation. I'd like to thank all officers and members for making it very easy for me to chair this meeting, and I look forward to your attendance at the meeting in June. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, members. Goodbye.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Chair.